Good evening, guys, and welcome to the January 14th business meeting and the real property tax law public hearing. If we all could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you guys so much. We are joined by 7 of our trustees, our superintendent of schools, Dr. Timothy Harney, our assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction, Mr. Robert Haas, our assistant superintendent of finance and operations, Mr. Luis Frontero, our district legal counsel, Mr. Edward McCarthy, our district clerk, Ms. Suzanne Benetti, and our student rep, Ms. Haley Hendershot. As always, there are 2 opportunities for the community to participate in the Board of Ed meeting. The first is just before the board takes up its agenda, and the second follows the disposition of all agenda items. As always, if you'd like to speak, we ask that you come to the podium. You must be a resident or an employee of the school district. Any person other than that must be authorized by a majority vote. As always, all of our Board of Ed meetings are live streamed and posted to board docs after, and you can follow us at BBP School District on Instagram. But at this time, I'll ask for a motion to leave the business meeting and enter the real property tax law public hearing. Ms. Conley, second by Ms. Pignataro. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. At this time, we will turn it over to Mr. Frontario for our hearing.
Thank you, Mr. President. All political subdivisions, like school districts, for example, that are taxing authorities, have the ability to adopt exemptions, property tax exemptions. And one of them in particular that we have already adopted for many years was the statewide volunteer firefighter and ambulance workers exemption. Now, we recently had re-upped that back in our reorganization meeting in this past July. Of course, when you want to make a change to this particular exemption, you must have a hearing, which is what we're doing right now. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to make eligibility go from the current 5-year. The law had changed. That's how we got the new statewide one in the first place. So that we want eligibility to start after, instead of 5 years, which we're currently doing, we're going to change it to 2 years. And again, that change should not in any particular way. I've discussed this with the assessors' offices, and for the most part, most of the people who are qualify, who have the 2 years, would not qualify because most of them do not own the property. And many of these ambulance workers and volunteer fire persons with 2 years of experience generally don't. They live with family for the most part anyhow. So the impact is very slight. Ultimately, whatever impact there would be on the 25-26 taxing year. So it's not going to be retroactive or back in any particular way to what we've already adopted. So that's pretty much it. Qualifying properties are ones that firefighters or ambulance workers have where they actually own the property. It is their principal residence, so forth. And all we need is to approve it, and we can pass that on tomorrow to the assessor's office of both Islip and Brookhaven Townships. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frontero. Any questions? Any community members with any questions? Not hearing. Thank you so much, Mr. Frontero. Appreciate it.
Much appreciated.
Can I have a motion to leave the real property tax law public hearing and return to the business meeting? Ms. Conley, second. Ms. Pignataro, all in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We're just going to wait a few minutes just to make sure none of the students miss the award. So we will wait about 5 minutes till 7 to make sure none of you guys miss your awards. It's a great time to ask Dr. Harney questions. He would appreciate that. All right, guys, thank you so much. Since we already opened the meeting with the pledge, we'll jump right into community new or old business. So anybody like to come? Any questions for the board or the superintendent? If not hearing any, we'll turn it over to Dr. Honey for his report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Good evening to everybody. First of all, I hope everyone had a great holiday season and a happy new year. Welcome back to everybody. Saying that, just want to remind everyone that we are closed on Monday. So you're aware, and then we are also closed on the 29th as well for both holidays, Martin Luther King Day and the Lunar New Year. Also, just something to point out, recently you had seen something probably that had gone out on social media, speaking about some of the things you might have seen from the fall season. And out of that, I think it is noticeable that we had 4 coaches that were honored for Coaches of the Year. So that, I think that is very important. So I'd like to just give them congratulations and a kudos to them. This Thursday, we have a couple of things going on. This Thursday, through Mr. Haas's efforts, we have partnered with Sayville, and we're going to do 2 workshops with them. The first one is going to be at Sayville Middle School, and it's really talking about, again, suicide prevention, suicide awareness. This first workshop, entitled More Than Said, which is Thursday at 6:30, and I believe it's the middle school, correct, Mr. Haas? Is that right? Yep. So that's that. And then also, Seed, who works very closely with the district, is also doing a fundraiser that night. They're doing that local, so hopefully you can make one of those for us. The other things that I have to share is one is about just an update on the regionalization, which we will talk about, but I'll do that when we have that discussion. And I think from there, I'll just hold on everything else and I'll pass it off to Ms. Hendershot for her report.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and Happy New Year. To begin, BPE celebrated the 80th day of school on Thursday, January 13th. Students and staff dressed up in 80s attire, which turned out to be a rad time. Throughout the months, students have learned about gratitude, empathy, and making connections. During January, students will focus on kindness, including the Great Kindness Challenge at the end of the month. Keep an eye on BPE's Instagram, BPE School, for everything they accomplish. Over at Academy, we had an internet safety presentation for our 4th and 5th graders at the end of the month. This Saturday, we had a Bingo and Bagels family event with Frosty at Academy Street, which was filled with fun and community. We appreciate the Academy Street PTA for putting this event together and loved having our families come together. We also want to thank our PTA for getting us books for our community book club. Look out for information coming your way on that later in the month. Sylvan Avenue students returned from the winter break ready to engage in learning. Kindergarten students are excited to participate in a winter wildlife assembly later this week, where they will learn about local animals and their habitats. We hope many Sylvan students and families can join us at the Super Bingo Showdown on Friday, January 24th at 6:30 p.m. JWY would like to thank 8th grade parents and guardians for attending the Freshman Orientation Information Night at the high school last week, and our 8th grade students for their active participation in the Course Expo. We hope these events sparked meaningful conversations for students and their families and provided a valuable introduction to the many exciting opportunities awaiting them next year. Additionally, we are thrilled to celebrate the accomplishment of our Science Olympiad team led by Miss Peterson, which competed at the Blue Dragon Invitational in Levittown this past weekend. The team earned 4 medals and placed 23rd out of 46 nationally ranked teams. As they shift their focus to regionals on March 2nd at Murphy Middle School, we wish them the best of luck in their pursuit of a trophy. Finally, at BBP High School, our freshman orientation and course expo were also great successes, helping students smoothly adjust to life in high school. With the January reading exams fast approaching, our faculty and staff are working hard to ensure that our students are well prepared by continuing to foster an environment focused on academic excellence where every student is encouraged to reach their full potential. Beyond academics, we are also emphasizing artistic greatness and athletic dominance, offering numerous opportunities for students to showcase their talents. Lastly, we remain committed to ensuring the social and emotional well-being of all of our students, providing them with the necessary support to thrive both inside and outside the classroom. Thank you for your ongoing support.
Thank you, Ms. Hendershot. We appreciate it. At this time, we'll turn it back over to Dr. Harney for our BBP Community and Coca 5K Fun Run and Walk to starting now with some of our winners.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. So let me just give you a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Haas. I guess it was about 3 years ago that we had a conversation with a number of students about really trying to put something together. And out of it came the 5K Cocoa Run. And really the idea of it was to, again, in terms of everything that we're doing as a district in terms of SEL, or again, to talk about suicide prevention and awareness. And I think the thing that sticks with me most with this event, and again, I know I'm probably stealing a little bit Mr. Haas's thunder here a little bit, but it is truly run by students. We started with 5 or 6 students who are now, majority of them are seniors now, who have been working on this for now 3 years. And it's pretty much student run. And then we added the t-shirt contest, which we have a student who's won. Then we added the ornament piece, which is student run. Then we added the sting around the track for the younger students, which became student run. We put on the movie in the middle and hear why it's happening. Students are overseeing it, so it's everything run by them, and that's probably one of the things that I am most proud of. Now, saying that, I also need to give kudos to Mr. Haas. He is one who meets with the students on a regular basis, though they have really taken control of it. I need to acknowledge him for all the work that he has done with it, and thank him for that. So with saying that, I want him to be here, the one to recognize the students that he's been working with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Haas and say a big thank you to you. We talk often a lot about BBP, about tradition. Well, I'm happy to say that this is becoming one of our traditions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Harney, and I would echo those words in terms of this quickly becoming, in our 3rd year, this has quickly become a great tradition here in our community. The weather has cooperated for 3 years, but you really can see the turnout. From the first year, we had just over 100 people participating in it, and then really what showed up was probably in the 80s. To this year, we were right around just over 200 people participating the day of the event. So, and that is a credit, as Dr. Harney said, that's a credit to the students, many of which are here in the audience that we'll recognize tonight, in terms of having the idea behind this and then putting in the work. When a lot of students don't have to do this, they take the time to meet with me, meet with Dr. Harney, do work on their own, come up with different ideas, find out ways to how can we get more kids involved and more community members involved. So it really has been a tremendous honor to be able to work with them over the past 3 years, and I look forward to this being a long-standing tradition within our community. So as Dr. Harney mentioned, 2 parts of the Community and Cocoa Run are, we have a t-shirt contest, and this year we started to include the ornament that every student who participates in the fun run around the track walks away with an ornament that is made right here in the high school, led by our students. We took the design of one of the students this year and put it, so we have one of those students is here today. Our ornament winner this year was high school senior Dylan Kleeman. I don't believe he's here, but I did want to acknowledge him this evening and give him the recognition for creating such a great design that we wound up putting onto the ornament for the students. And we do have our t-shirt contest winner that goes out to all of, goes out district-wide to all through the art classes. And I would like to call up 2nd grader from Academy Street Elementary, Quinn Pontieri, whose this year's design was selected. Ms. Beard, would you like to come up as well, build principal? Congratulations, and thank you, Quinn, for taking the time to do that. Again, the students do that on their own time in terms of coming up with those designs and submitting them, so thank you very much for doing that. So now moving on to the high school students. As Dr. Harney mentioned, this started 3 years ago with a group of students at the high school. There were really 5 of them at the time, and this year we kind of put a challenge to them because, as he mentioned, there's quite a few seniors, and we want them to continue to do the work on it. So we did challenge our seniors to bring another student with them that was willing to work. They weren't going to be somebody that was going to come and just sit there and not really contribute. We needed students who were going to come and participate, give their ideas, and really try and move it forward and make it grander, more grand than it was the previous year. And they did just that. Our upperclassmen brought in students who were very energetic, came in with such good ideas, showed up for every meeting that we had, and then showing up at the event on an early Saturday morning in the cold in December to really help make it such a successful event this year, raising over $5,000 that goes directly back into the high school and supporting our wellness club and some of the programs that they have for the students. So I would like to call up those students, and I'm going to start with some of our underclassmen. So we have Xander Capozzi. Not here, I don't see them in the audience, but we had AJ Cavuto, who has been with us from the beginning, and Angela Cavuto. Also, we had Anna Gibson. She's not able to make it. Abby Hendershot, who I don't see in the audience, but want to thank her. Kylie Jensen, also not able to make it. Brady Noon. And lastly, I do want to, I saved them to the end, but the seniors who have been with us doing this for the past 3 years and really have put all of their energy into it. And I cannot thank them enough. It is, like I said, it's been an honor for me to be able to work with them. It is, you go into this field, you go into education to have the opportunity to work with students like this. And these students are the best of the best when it comes to that. And not only was, a lot of hard work put into it, but I think we had a lot of fun, especially this year as they brought in some of the social media videos that they made us take part in. So they did a great job, and I cannot thank them enough. But they all promised they were going to come back and actually run next year. So we're going to hold them to that. So we have here tonight Maddie Duncan. Haley Hendershot. Luke Snyder. And not able to make it tonight, but again, students who put in such a tremendous amount of time with us, Katie Edwards and Amanda Woods. Mr. Walcott, you want to join us for a picture? Ms. Pignataro. So congratulations on a successful event, and thank you again for everything you guys have done.
Congratulations, guys. On behalf of the board, thank you so much for all the work, time and hard work you put in. But at this time, if you'd like to go home, we definitely understand. If not, we will be getting into a budget presentation. Have a good night. Thanks, guys. For the rest of you staying, for the excitement, we will get into our budget presentation number 2 with Mr. Fronterio, who promised that it is a short one tonight.
No, it's not. Yeah, now it's on. Excellent. Good evening. Welcome to Budget Workshop number 2. This one is has a main kind of focus. It has to do with the process of developing the tax cap, and it's still all very preliminary. I want to make sure that going in, you know that it's very preliminary in its process, but certainly something we have to start thinking about. Tonight's purpose, again, I'm addressing a December 16th Newsday article about fund balance, which we just don't want to let go without at least publicly discussing it for a couple seconds, and establishing the tax cap calculation. And I promise to cover all of these topics that are on the agenda. Notwithstanding, back on December 16th of 2024, Newsday ran an article about undesignated fund balance, and they happened to mention BBP in this article. And there were 10 school districts, and we were one of them. The thing to keep in mind here is that when they talked about undesignated fund balances, they were bringing us in without interviewing the district, speaking to Dr. Harney, and pooling us with 10 other districts who habitually exceed the 4% limit. And I actually worked in one of the districts where it was part of the culture, expected that we would go over, and whatever number it was, and it was always exceeding it, and it became something in the management letter. But again, there was no teeth to it. There was no punitive things that might happen to a district that does that. It's possible that in the future, with the Rockefeller Foundation, they did make some kind of a recommendation about the districts that exceed the 4%, that the difference would be deducted dollar for dollar from their foundation aid. So that would have some real teeth in it, but who knows if that'll ever happen. Notwithstanding, we got dragged into this. It happened to us only once as a district, and that was the year, June 30th of 2021, the year ending that fiscal year, where we actually exceeded it a little bit because it was the COVID year, and there were expenditures we did not have. And so we had additional funding, and that's why we went over, basically, and that's our management letter indicated that. The difference above the 4% was used to fund the lighting project, which again had no additional cost to our taxpayers, and it was one of those things, an aberration. We knew it was going to happen. It probably happened to every district in the state. I can tell you it probably happened to every district on Long Island that exceeded that cap that year because of COVID, essentially, and the expenditures we did not have. So again, just to clear the air and to make sure that everyone is clear, our district only once we got melded in, like I said, with districts who habitually or would exceed the 4% without any imputative damages, but perhaps that might change in the future. In any event, that's the only thing off topic. Now, moving ahead, of course, yes.
Mr. Frontar, can I just add one thing to that? There were a couple other things that played into that, though that was the COVID year as well. And we had if you remember, that we did not, everything that, our expenses were different, right? So from that current year, because what we thought were going to be expensive were not because of COVID during all that year. That's correct. Also, there was a thing at that time, if you remember, there was a discussion at that time that the following year, all districts were going to be cut 20%, if you recall. So at that time, when we were in the budget cycle, we started to look at all different scenarios. So that is another reason why we carried over more money, just in case that if the money was in a reserve, and we had talked about this in public, if the money was in a reserve, we would not necessarily have easy access to it, as opposed to if it was over in as the fund balance over there, we could have access to it. So that became a big deal. That's why at that time it was the 1.5 or whatever it was that was over.
1.95.
Okay. And then the lights at that year cost $1.15 million. So, and that's where we were able to do the lights. But originally, we were also worried about were there going to be cuts from the state that every district in the state was threatened with at the time, or told that might happen. Fortunately, that never did happen, so we were able to go forward. So that is another thing that played into that. And also in saying that we spoke to both of our auditors. I want people to know that. We spoke to the external and the internal auditors about doing this, knowing that it could show up within the management letter. We were told at that time majority of their districts were doing that because of the uncertainty. So we felt very comfortable with that. And as Mr. Frontieri alluded to, it only happened that 1 year. And matter of fact, the past 2 years, we've been under 3%, which we would much rather this should be closer to the 4%, but that is something that we're also working as well, just so people have a little bit more of an understanding to it. Any questions on any of that? And then we'll go into the presentation. Good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So again, our strategic plan will be part of every presentation, of course, and community connection, academic excellence, and student experience, all basically where the focus of our strategic plan and where we're heading each day when we come to BBP. This is, again, our schedule of important timeframes. As you can see tonight, this is January 14th. It is presentations number 2, and it basically is going to involve a little bit about the tax cap. So, as you can see, the components of our revenue, we have state aid. Hopefully, we still have state aid when this is all done. Appropriated fund balance, some local and other sources that we have, and of course, our tax levy, which is our largest source of revenue. And of course, it's the tax levy that is subject to the tax cap. We have, again, 25-26 preliminary tax cap calculation. It's important to keep that in mind. And one of the key components that are involved in this is the growth factor. That comes from Albany, from the Office of Real Property Services. And what essentially it represents is the change in assessed value in a particular jurisdiction over a year. So, for example, for new construction and the like. And we've had some new construction, both the 7-Eleven and the McDonald's, and that has driven that up. Last year, it was 1.0024. So it's reflecting the fact that new construction has been done in our environs. And again, that's not a number we control. It's just reflective of the things that happen in Albany. This is essentially the calculation. I'll walk you through it, and then I'll talk to you about some of the components involved in it. The current year voter-approved tax levy is our opening number. That's the $61,999,186. And that growth factor that I just mentioned, we apply that growth factor of 10036, which gives us a new total of $62,222,383. If we had any pilots, we would be adding them now, but we don't have any, and less any capital exclusions from 24-25. So the $5,303,000 was the value of our capital exclusions when we were doing this process last year. Okay, so that number is subtracted from our $62,222,383. We get $56,918,830. We have no torts involved in this particular transaction, so that number comes down of $56,918,830. Now it's multiply the allowable levy from the controller. Now, we don't know exactly what that's going to be, but I'm assuming that it's because it's the change is the change in CPI or 2%, whichever is lower. And it's more than likely at the time, I'm assuming at the moment, based on this calculation, that it'll actually be the 2% because CPI will be higher. But again, we don't know that yet. It's not official, and that's why this is all preliminary. But that 2% is applied to the $56,918,830, which has been adjusted again for growth factor, for backing out our capital expenditures, et cetera. So we apply that, and we get a new allowable tax levy limit, and that's $58,057,000 to $58,057,206. Bring that down. We don't have any. Again, we don't have any pilots, so we can't adjust it at all. We have no carryover as well. So then it comes a matter of what is our capital exclusion. The current calculation that I have is a best estimate, and it's maybe inflated. Again, we're going through the process and probably be adjusted, but at the moment is 6,083,052. When we take that number and add it to the 58 million, we get 64,142,58. That would be our new, if you will, next year's tax levy, with including the capital exclusions. When I apply, if you look in the box, and you can see that we have our current year levy of 61,999,186, and we compare that to this preliminary number for 25-26 of 64,140,000, the increase is 2,141,000, which represents a 3.45% budget tax levy increase, and that's within the cap. It's within the cap because of the exclusion for capital, which this takes into effect. So we apply the 2%, but then we get an opportunity to add back any capital exclusions that happen to work. Let me talk a little bit about it. This is the calculation for the capital exclusion. And again, it's subject to change because I'm not sure yet about the debt service number. Possibly there may be some reason why we can use the library debt as well in this calculation, and I'll be looking at that very closely. But as you can see, for 25-26, check the debt service that we currently have of 4,856,157, and we currently have an estimated building aid from the November 15th run of state aid that gives us $1,943,631. That has to be subtracted from our debt service because we already are receiving that, if you will, in terms of state aid, and you can't double dip. And then the exclusion, the number before exclusion is 2,912,526, and to that we add our capital expenditure of currently of $3,100,000, and we're able. They got the law changed a few years in, where we could actually use the BOCES calculation, their net, the value of some of their properties as a component of the Eastern Suffolk BOCES of the 70,526, which again is a number that's going to change a little bit by the time we get done. So you add those numbers up, you subtract and add and so forth, and we come up with a total capital exclusion at the moment of $6,083,052, and that's what I use in the calculation that I just showed you, and I'll go back to that in a moment. Again, the debt service number, right now, this is the schedule of debt service for 25-26. At the moment, I have dropped out the library debt, but that's a possibility that I may be working to use the budgeted number, which would include the library debt. I'm going to look closely at that. But that's where the $4,856,157 comes from. Here's a best estimate, if you will, of what we might be able to do in terms of capital. It may be overstated at the moment, and again, I'm looking closely at that in terms of transfer from capital projects from 23-24, 24-25, and 25-26, where we're currently budgeting a transfer to capital at the moment, and we're holding that in place. And there may be some residual on the EPC. I don't really think it'll be that high. So we'll be back and forth a little bit. This number will change for sure until when we're finally done. So backing up a little bit and going back to that chart, you can see that there's the growth factor of 10036. There is our 2% applied to a new base, and then the capital exclusion gets added back in, giving us a $64,142,56 tax levy, projected tax levy for 25-26, which again, when you look at the difference, it's additional $2,141,072 in dollars, which is 3.45% budget to budget, tax levy to tax levy. And those are the components. Again, I'll go back over this probably in the next couple of presentations. As first of all, we get the confirmation that it is 2% and some other changes that will ultimately be involved in it. And for the 28th, hopefully we have information about the state aid, which looks like we will hopefully have some information. And I'll begin reviewing the series, budget codes 1,000, 5,000, and 9,000, where I go into the functions and explain at least once during the process what each of those functions are all about and the dollar change and percent changes. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Frontiero. Any questions from trustees? Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, Mr. Frontier, can you go back to the slide with where you show the breakdown of overall area tax? So I think I like to always point out to everybody, because, you know, you hear a lot in the community about confusion about my tax bill went up or it didn't go up. So that growth factor, I think that $300,000, for anybody in this room who lives in the community who's done nothing to their house, that doesn't impact us, correct?
No.
So what that really impacts is it's actually additional tax revenue that's coming into the community. It's coming through whether it's a 7-Eleven that just came up,
The
or
assessed value, right.
or if somebody puts a pool in their backyard and the CO closes and they say, okay, now you got to pay X amount of more in taxes because you have a pool, correct?
Well, I think it's more that the change in assessed valuation on new construction.
Okay.
In over a 12-month period. But I don't think it has to do necessarily with that particular growth figure number. It does not have to do with if somebody puts.
But there's other components within the taxes that, you know, you're within that, for if you put in a pool or an extension on your house where your assessed value goes up, they would expect you to take a bigger portion of the tax burden than you had prior.
Well, you would. If your assessment goes up, everybody pays the same tax rate.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of multiplying that tax rate times an assessed valuation. So if your assessment goes up, you'll pay more than the guy next door, perhaps, whose assessment's a little lower because they did nothing to their house.
But technically, put it in an elementary level, if I've done nothing to my house, my taxes aren't going to go up 3.45%. They're going to go up probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 2% or CPI, whichever is less, correct? If I really had to really put it in a.
I would say that the most important thing we do is come up with a levy that makes sense. The taxing implications of any increase in tax levy varies so much. It's a zero-sum game. We're going to get our tax levy, but how it gets distributed amongst all the properties is going to vary from literally property to property. So it really is going to depends on what happens. Sometimes somebody's increase could be a little bit higher, and I would say to them, well, what did you do to your house? Or go back to your bill from last year. What's the change in assessment? You know, because again, the rate is the rate, and it would probably go up pretty much on average, let's say, to the 2%. Does that make sense?
Any other questions? Anybody in the community? Mr. Frontier, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. But at this time, we'll turn it over to the board, who's going to have a conversation about regionalization. Just wanted to give a little background first. If you remember back in late August, every district was directed to complete a regionalization survey due by mid-November. And if you remember at that time, Mr. Haas provided a presentation in the fall. And if you remember at that time, districts started hearing questioning the language from the state. You heard it from media outlets, personnel and board members were questioned, and they gave their perspectives. At that time, the survey was moved to December 6th, but prior to that date, more information was provided, and districts at that time were provided an opportunity to opt in or opt out, with a caveat of you must notify the education department by January 15th. So that's why we're here tonight. So either way, we will let them know. But just so people are aware, we do have a resolution prepared. If the board opts in, nothing will be approved. If the board decides to opt out, we do have a resolution prepared that we can put onto the regular agenda at that time. But at this time, we'll open it up to the board for any discussions or questions about regionalization. Ms. Pignataro.
So a question that I have, and I think that some community members might have as well, and I'm not sure if it's Dr. Harney that would answer, but if the board chooses tonight to opt out of the regionalization plan, we, for example, share some programs with Sayville, neighboring district. do you have any sense that opting out would preclude us from continuing to do that?
Yeah, no, one of the things we've talked about in the past is as a district, we do have a number of shared services. And I listed them a few times as, you know, whether it been, we had shared robotics club with them, obviously swimming. We've shared transportation with school districts. We even have shared services with our public library in terms of security. We've done that. I do not see anything, and I have read nothing, and I believe Mr. McCarthy would agree with me, that says that we would not be able to continue to do that, or to be able to continue to look for other opportunities where we could share opportunities, whether it be for courses or other things. I think those opportunities are still always available to us, and that is something that we will continue to do, because I think it's just a good practice.
Ms. Conley?
Dr. Harney, do you have a sense of the districts that would make up our region? What percentage are opting in versus opting out at this point?
Yeah, I couldn't give you the exact factual, but I could tell you from my understanding, within Nassau County, majority of them have opted out, okay? I would tell you within Suffolk County, from everything I've heard, it's been somewhere around 50-50. Within our own Islip cluster, there's only been 3, and we're probably made up of 10 or 11 districts. There's 3 that have opted in. Everyone else has opted out. And then there's another close neighbor who has opted in, who's not part of the Islip cluster as well. So that's kind of what I am understanding, you know, as I've been gathering information over the last week or so, or additional information over the last week. One of the things that we were hoping to get some clarity on when Mr. McCarthy and I spoke about this at our last board meeting was if you were able to, say you opted in, and then at some point you saw something that where you said, you know what, I would rather not be part of that, could you get out? There's been no clarity on that in terms of, from myself, that would say, yes, you could opt out at that time. It makes it sound like you're in, and if you're out, you're out. And it sounds like you've been out for a number of years because the plan is a 10-year plan. Now, those are the things I've been told as we speak right now, but just like anything, things can change as you go forward. And I think Mr. McCarthy wants to add something.
Yeah, that's our understanding as well as counsel to the Board of Education that, you know, specifically and expressly, school districts were told via the regulation, and there was a regulation that was adopted in December by the Board of Regents, and specifically to the extent you're going to opt out, there's a firm deadline of tomorrow, January 15th. So there's no authority either expressly or implicitly that would allow this school district or any school district to opt out after January 15th.
Ms. Pignataro?
And just for clarification purposes, when we talk about opting in or opting out, we're talking about opting out of the planning process as well as opting out of the actual regionalization plan for the state. Is that correct?
That is my understanding right now, is that you are saying is we had, as Mr. Miller alluded to early on, is you had a survey to complete if you were to opt in that you would send. We have not sent it as of yet. And if you do not send that in, then you would not be part of the planning process, which my understanding then is you would not be part of the regionalization if it moves forward. And that I couldn't even tell you how it would move forward because there's so many unknowns right now. Right?
Yeah, so again, nothing has changed since our last update in December. It should be noted again that the Board of Regents adopted these regulations and amended regulations in December that essentially permits the school district to opt out of the regionalization planning process itself. That survey tool is in and of itself the regionalization planning process. However, when the Board of Regents acted in December, they held officials of the state education department, specifically the Office of Educational Policy, held a press conference and indicated that notwithstanding the fact that the regulation only expressly permits an opt-out of the regionalization planning process, that if you are going to opt out, you're opting out of both the planning process and essentially the thereafter regionalization plan itself. So additional comments and direction from the State Education Department clarified for us as a firm that if you're opting out of both the planning process and the 10-year regionalization plan itself. I just want to note that the regulation, however, only speaks to the planning process, which is the submission of the survey. So there's a little bit of a distinction there, but the body of the resolution tonight that we have prepared for the Board of Education, to the extent that the district opts out, speaks to, it's about a page and a half resolution, and it speaks to the difference between what the regulation states, and also references the additional comments by the State Education Department, and then at the very end also preserves and reserves the right of the district moving forward in terms of anything that may happen to them as a district as a result of opting out.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Any other trustee questions? Does anybody have any concerns if we add this to the resolution to opt out to the agenda? Not hearing any concerns. Ms. Benetti, if you could please add it to the regular agenda. And if you're at home watching, if you refresh in a few minutes, you will be able to see the resolution pop up on the agenda. While we're doing that, is there any items the board would like removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Can I have a motion to approve items K, L, M, N, O, and P? Ms. Conley, second. Ms. Pignataro, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. I would just ask the board to refresh as well. If you refresh, it should come up. Moving on to, we have 3 items tonight. Can I have a motion to gratefully accept the resolution from an anonymous community member to help out students in need for $500 for the lunch? Ms. Conley, second. Mr. Krug, any discussion? Obviously, they wanted to remain anonymous, but we do appreciate them giving $500 for students in need in this district. We truly do appreciate it. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Can I have a motion to review the second reading of policies 0101, equal opportunity, 0115, student harassment and bullying prevention and intervention, 0130, district complaint procedures for federal programs, 1120, school district records, and 6900, disposal of broken, surplus, obsolete district property? Ms. Conley, second. We'll give it to Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Just real quick, Mr. McCarthy, do you think we should read this whole thing, or can I do a short resolution for this?
I mean, it's on the agenda, so I don't think you have to read it out loud.
Can I have a motion for the Board of Education to opt out of the regionalization plan? Ms. Pignataro, second. Mr. Johnson, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. At this time, we'll open it up to community members for any new business. Not hearing any, we'll open it up to trustees for any new business. Ms. Pignataro.
Not sure if this counts exactly as new business, but just as part of the regionalization, to circle back, I wanted to just thank Dr. Harney and Mr. Haas and their team for the work that they did to compile the report that would have needed to be submitted had we chosen to opt in. So although the board did not go forward tonight with participating in the regionalization plan, I know it was a huge task for you and your team to compile that work, so thank you so much for doing that. And hopefully the data becomes useful in some way to the district, but we do appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Any other trustees? Not hearing, can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Krug, second by? Ms. Pignataro, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.